Well, I guess somebody had to do it. If you're maining Amber, you've probably already come to terms with your damage output being low. That doesn't mean she's unusable, and if you don't believe me, you can watch this clip. Yeah, this person's really good. Anyways, we can get you more damage, so follow this guide if you want to be hitting bigger numbers, because in this guide, we're going to be going over 4-star Yoimiya's best artifacts and weapons for both a main DPS and burst support build with pyro and physical damage. This video is sponsored by nobody in particular, so we're going to get right into the build. Starting off with our physical damage build. So for a physical DPS Amber build, you're going to want to run 2-piece Pale Flame and 2-piece Bloodstained Chivalry, so that way you can get the most physical damage bonus possible. Amber's passive Ascension stat is attack percent, so you shouldn't run into trouble getting your attack to a decent number at least, and that's pretty nice. It's fine to substitute a 2-piece for Gladiators, but it's not really ideal since the physical damage set will give you more overall damage, but maybe you have a good 2-piece Gladiator sitting around that you want to use for her, in which case that is fine. For stats, you're going to want to go for attack percent Sands, physical damage Goblet, and a crit rate or crit damage Circlet to give you a ratio of 40 crit rate to 80 crit damage bare minimum. That's the golden rule of crit, but you may be able to use attack percent instead if you can't achieve it. If you're not super interested in physical damage though, use the next build. We're going to talk about Pyro main DPS Amber. So you may or may not have seen this, but in my Yanfei guide, I recommended Crimson Witch over Wanderers. And the reason that I made that argument is because Crimson Witch is able to get nearly the same amount of value, and in some cases even more value than Wanderer's Troop, just due to the Elemental Mastery diminishing returns. And in addition to that, Wanderers wouldn't power up Yanfei's autos, and on top of that, even the cost of farming a Crimson Witch piece is lower than the cost of farming a Wanderer's piece. With Amber though, that actually changes. The main difference is that Yanfei has a 9-second cooldown on her Elemental skill to proc the Crimson Witch set, whereas Amber has a 15-second cooldown on her elemental skill, so you lose the pyro damage bonus much more of the time. With that being said, the 4-piece Wanderer's Troop set is going to be the best for pyro main DPS Amber, and you should absolutely be using it if you have access to it. For stats, I'd go for an attack percent Sands, pyro damage Goblet, and crit damage on the Circlet. And the reason you're actually going to be ignoring crit rate is because with this Amber build, you're going to be going for critical hits with her aimed shot. So while you can build crit rate on her, it's not really super relevant because you're going to be skill shotting with Amber, which means you're going to be aiming for critical spots and getting the bonus damage as often as possible. So for substats for this build, you want to go for a lot of crit damage if you can, but Elemental Mastery is actually good if you're going to be reacting, which you absolutely should with Amber, by the way. And attack percent is also really good. And finally, if you're using Amber to destroy shields, reverse melt or vape, and taunt enemies, you're going to want to be building her as a burst support. The idea here is that you want to have your burst up as much as possible, so you're going to build Amber with a lot of energy recharge so that you can constantly use arrow rain to apply pyro and destroy shields. So for this build, you're going to either build Amber with 2-piece Crimson Witch, 2-piece Noblesse for the most consistent damage on Q, or you're going to be building her with 4-piece Noblesse if you don't have a Noblesse user on your team already. If you don't have a Noblesse user on your team and you're trying to play Amber as a support, you should use 4-piece Noblesse on her because every time you use your arrow rain, you're going to get that 20% attack buff for a short amount of time. And the whole purpose of you building her as a burst support is for you to get as much uptime on that arrow rain as possible. Alternatively, as I stated before, you can use 2-piece Crimson Witch and 2-piece Noblesse to try to buff the damage of your arrow rain itself, though I will say artifact stats aren't necessarily all going to be going towards damage. For stats, you're going to be wanting an energy recharge Sands, pyro damage Goblet, and either an attack percent or crit Circlet depending on your crit substats and if they're good enough to build crit rate or damage. For reference, that is the 40-80 ratio again. But for support Amber, you may actually just be better off building attack percent anyways. For substats, good substats to look for are going to be energy recharge, attack percent, and crit. So now that we've talked about all the builds, we're going to move on to weapons, and Amber's not a super complex creature, so this should be fairly straightforward. If I don't include your favorite weapon, that doesn't necessarily make it not viable, but I will be listing the best weapon options with accessible free-to-play options. So let's get started with the physical damage build. The top contenders are Skyward Harp, followed by Amos Bow, followed by Rust, and Viridescent Hunt. And Viridescent Hunt is really good because of the crit it provides you, but also for the grouping capabilities. The grouping capabilities won't be super good for physical Amber, but they'll be super great for the rest of your team, so that one's super solid. Blackcliff Warbow comes after Viridescent Hunt for the crit stat, and Fischl's new bow comes right after Blackcliff Warbow. It's definitely not best in slot or anything, but it gives you a little bit of extra damage on your Baron Bunny and a little bit of extra damage on your autos after Baron Bunny explodes. It also has a physical damage main stat, so it makes it really great for building physical. Following Fischl's new bow is Prototype Crescent, which is free to play craftable, and after that comes Slingshot, which is really easy to get in the gacha because it's a 3-star weapon, which you'll be seeing a ton of. You might be asking why I didn't mention Compound Bow, and it is actually up there with Prototype Crescent, but it gives you less flexibility and damage, and I like the passive of Prototype Crescent better, so I prefer Crescent personally. You can build Compound Bow, but you will be limited to what characters you can actually use it with. Moving on now to Pyro DPS Amber, here are the best weapons. We have Amos Bow, followed by Skyward Harp, which is followed by Prototype Crescent, which is an easy craftable as stated before, followed by Black Cliff Warbow, and Windbloom Ode. Viridescent Hunt actually got left out here because it is a good bow, but again, you don't need crit rate as much when you're using aim shots because you're already aiming at crit spots on enemies, so it's less valuable. And if you're going for a melt build, then Sharpshooter's Oath is actually a really good weapon. And finally, if you're going to build support Amber, then you want to prioritize energy recharge, so that's bows like Elegy for the end, Favonius Warbow, Sacrificial Bow, and then Stringless for all of the bonus damage. Again guys, this doesn't necessarily mean that all the other bows are off the table, these are just the best bows for each build. Also, I'm aware that I talk pretty fast sometimes, so if you missed any of that, feel free to skip back to different timestamps in the video, those should be in the description. So now that we finalized what weapons and artifacts you should be using, I have a couple general tips that you should stick around for because these are super relevant to Amber. So one thing that a lot of bow users with way too much free time on their hands do is learn to animation cancel shots to get higher DPS. So you can animation cancel by holding and releasing charge shot, or if you're on mouse and keyboard, you can double tap R. There's a lot of really great videos on animation canceling. Unfortunately, I'm too bad to show it as an example, but we can watch this Abyss run so you guys can get a general idea of what's going on. Though this person in the Abyss is actually canceling in the opposite fashion of what I just described. They're using hold click charge shots that aren't actually charging all the way to get the most damage they possibly can while releasing for an instant to move and then charging again, and it creates what looks like auto attacks, but it's actually just really quick to aim shots that are happening over and over and over, and it allows them to maneuver around the room super easily. However, aiming this is not easy. But yeah, if you got a bunch of free time and you want to learn how to play her like the most optimally possible, then you could always learn how to animation cancel if you're doing a physical damage build. Moving on to tip number 2, this one's actually about Amber's talent scaling, and not a lot of people know about this or really talk about it even, but the scaling on Amber's Q is actually really good. For reference, Amber gets 707% total fire rain damage at level 6 talent. Level 6 is not that high. And if you decided to crown her, there'd be 909% at level 10. So really, it is a lot of damage that's going out. I know it doesn't look like it because it's a bunch of small numbers, but it is a lot of small numbers that add up to one big number. So definitely a good burst. For that reason, I'd actually encourage you to build her auto and charged attacks and her burst, but you can kind of ignore Baron Bunny a little bit. Like if you only have limited resources and you have to choose 2 ways to go, build her burst and her autos first. Baron Bunny is pretty good, but the problem with Baron Bunny is that even if you build Amber with all HP, Baron Bunny's still going to have almost no health because her base HP that gets built off of is really low. Anyways, that was a bit of a tangent, but we can move on to tip number 3. Every pyro character benefits a lot from melt and vaporize, and Amber's not an exception. Since the elemental mastery buffs went through though, overload is also really strong, so that opens up a whole world of team compositions. Personally, for overload, I like to run Amber with Fischl, but if I'm going to be doing melt, I like to use Kaya and Noelle. I use Noelle so I can get a shield around me and then get close proximity with Kaya's Q. And once enemies are attacking Noelle's shield and getting hit by cryo constantly, then I can actually just use Amber to barrel stuff them with my bow and get the easiest melt crits of my life off. Dude, it is literally so easy. And this works with any shield character as well. You can use Zhongli, you can use Diona, you can use Xinyan even, although Xinyan would be a little counterproductive to the Kaya thing in particular because she lights people on fire. But yeah, shield your Amber, protect her at all costs. Anyways, that's it for this Amber guide. Hopefully you learned how to build her and hopefully you learned something new that you can take with you to go play best girl. Comment if you want to see more Amber content. I can do best attack strings. We can talk about her constellations. I don't know. We can find something, right? I go live a couple days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/Bryaxophone. Make sure to go follow if you want to see some awesome Genshin Impact gameplay. And if you like the video, make sure to like and comment down below. Hit subscribe if you want to see more Genshin Impact content, and I will see you guys later. Amber best girl.